Rachel, is Rick gonna be here?
Yes, sir. All right.
All right, I'm going to call to order the Board of Directors meeting of Community Transit for September 1st. Ow, September already. Rachel, if you could take the roll.
Councilmember Daughtry.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Frizzell. Mayor Marine.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Mead. Councilmember Merrill.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Nearing.
Here, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Nearing.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Roberts.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Schweddy. Here. Thank you. Chair, we do have a quorum. I'll quickly take count of which alternates we have in attendance. Councilmember Gallagher. Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Mayor Thompson. Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
Thank you. Chair, that concludes roll.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
Rachel.
Oh, apologies. Labor Representative Lance Norton.
You have a way of making
I
me
checked
feel,
you off.
you just got that special way of making me feel not important.
I know, I checked you off.
Thank
Not
you,
even
Rachel.
calling your name. Sorry about that, Lance.
To be
Thank you.
fair, we looked at Zoom, you weren't there.
Oh, you wait.
So, yeah, you're still on Zoom, so. All right, this is the public comment period. You've got 3 minutes to speak to the board. And we have written comments by Mr. Kunstler that was routed to the board earlier. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to read those, and if not, please do that. We have signed up to speak via Zoom. We have Reyes Oyada. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. Rhea, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Just a real quick audio check. I've never done a Zoom meeting for a large room. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. My name is Reyes. I'm actually a current employee of Community Transit. I work in the customer service team. So I collect feedback from customers via phone and email. And one of the trends that we're seeing, really that Community Transit is experiencing, is constant complaints about canceled service. And it seems to be growing. And everyone is aware, we have a driver shortage that's causing the cancellations, and customers are aware of this too, but it's just, the customer voice is getting louder and louder. One customer put it to me, he said, it's like riding a bus with Community Transit is like a moving target every day. That's not quite well, obviously we don't have any drivers. Yes, that's an issue, but my main concern is that how we're handling this shortage. Last winter, when the vaccine mandate came into place, and by no means I'm not debating for or against the mandate, just an example, but we knew that we were going to lose a certain number of drivers, yet we acted as if everything was okay and we didn't tell customers. And since then, we've been losing more people than we can hire. And what's more troubling to me is that, to be blunt, there are higher ups in management out there that are pretending like everything's okay. Everything's fine. Oh, no problem, whatsoever. I'm not sure if I'm not sure any of you look at memes or anything, but there's this meme of a cartoon dog. He has a big smiling face and he's in a room that's completely on fire. And the caption on it is, everything's fine. That's how I feel here at Community Transit. And And I believe that there is some low-hanging fruits out there, as low-hanging solutions that we can implement. We are running some buses that only have 3, 4, 5 people on them. And we're dedicating manpower to those particular routes or those particular trips where they can be used elsewhere in higher ridership. There's some redundancy in some routes. Some routes have twin routing. They can be combined, or one, they can be suspended. Bottom line is, I hope and I encourage everyone, including the board, we must implement some realistic decisions. This driver shortage is not going to get any better. We're living in some weird times, and it's affecting the labor industry, and our predictions, they've gone out the window so far. And we have to come up with way better solutions and really face those facts and make realistic decisions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ojeda. Next up, we have Sabina Araya.
Hello, Sabina Araya, Lake Stevens. Starting in June, I have come to these meetings to urge you to rescind the vaccine mandate or to offer accommodations for those drivers and mechanics that had religious or medical exemptions. I highlighted and provided detailed information on the effect of this policy that it had on service levels, and you've heard that just now too, both for this year and in the next few years in the TDP. In my written comments last month, I requested an explanation from the board in their approval of the March 2022 service changes and the process it followed to allow for that exemption from the Title VI requirements. I also requested copies of the correspondence with the FTA regarding this exception to the Title VI requirements for those 8 routes that had major service reductions. And a month later, I've received none of those. So I would respectfully request you to provide that information via email so that I and the public can understand the process of those exceptions to this policy. Secondly, I and others have provided comments questioning the efficiency of the vaccine mandate in improving safety and preventing COVID cases at community transit. The rising number of COVID cases in September was cited as the trigger for the implementation of this policy, yet after the unvaccinated were terminated, cases tripled and continued to increase. To pass the vaccine mandate as a safety measure as anything but ineffective in preventing the spread of COVID is to basically disregard the data and the results that we all saw in the last 8 months at community transit. As a safety measure, this mandate has the worst track record of any safety measure probably implemented. Even if you choose to disregard the effect of this policy on service levels and the lack of public input in the major service changes, and even if you choose to disregard the actual data and the abysmal track record and the lack of efficiency in preventing infections, will you now also disregard the latest CDC guidance, which in August was updated to show that COVID-19 prevention recommendations no longer differentiate between vaccinated and unvaccinated employees and people? COVID infection isolation protocols are the same regardless of vaccination status. The CDC also states that studies have shown that fully vaccinated employees and those previously infected each have a low risk of subsequent infections. Prior infections were not even a topic in this policy, and yet the CDC clearly states that it does matter. In light of the CDC guidance updates, this policy has no legs to stand on. While recommended, the CDC guidelines show that vaccination is not a prevention safety measure for COVID infections. The initial assumptions of this policy were mostly incorrect, and it is clear that conditions have changed. At the last meeting, you approved the updated resolution 1222, which allows the board the right to modify, expand, or restrict actions taken in response to an emergency. And I would urge you to do that today. Use that authority to rescind this vaccination mandate. While it is way overdue, it is never too late to do the right thing by the employees that were affected and for the public that you see keeps being affected by the service changes. Thank you.
Ms. Wright. Thank you very much for your comments. All right, is there anybody else in the room who would like to comment? Or if there is anybody on Zoom, if you could give us a raised hand. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody in the room or online. All right, we will move forward with our meeting. So we have, I guess, the unfortunate and fortunate, right? To thank a board member and to wish her well. You want to?
We do. We have a very special guest in attendance today. Some of you have already said hello, but I'd like to acknowledge and ask to join me at the podium, former council member and former board member, Stephanie Wright. How are you?
Good yourself.
Congratulations. Nice to see you. I hope you'll let us brag on you a little bit here this morning or this afternoon. So many of you probably heard the news that Councilmember Wright has accepted a position with Executive Summers. I'm not going to try to describe it because I probably won't do it justice, but she may, when I'm done, express some words in her own defense. So anyway.
Well said.
On behalf of the staff, I would like to thank Councilmember Wright for your service and your support of community transit. Before, I'm sure there's many members here who would like to share a recollection or two, but before we get to that, I want to just sort of walk down memory lane and remind everybody how much Stephanie Wright, as a board member, as a council member, as a city council member back in the day, has contributed to the advancement of transit in Snohomish County. Believe it or not, she served on the board over 12 years, which is pretty impressive. She began as an alternate way back in 2010, became a permanent member in 2013, and has held just about every job a board member can hold at Community Transit. She served as an officer of the board, secretary, vice chair, chair. As chair, she chaired the executive committee, and before that even did a term as the chair of the strategic alignment committee, which I think was called something else back then. But anyway, she's been there every step of the way as we went through our process of growth, proposing a growth plan to the taxpayers and the voters, which they accepted. She was there with us every step of the way on the planning and the opening of the Green Line and the Seaway Transit Center. She will be able, as an alumnus, to observe the benefits of the Orange Line in her own community when it opens up a couple of years from now. So she's been a true stalwart in supporting transit. She's been a great ally, and she's always taken great care to uphold and protect the interests of our employees. And as chair of the health board, has brought great expertise to all of us as we've struggled our way through this pandemic. So again, on behalf of the staff, thank you. It's been a delight to have you here, and we have hardware to present.
We don't have hardware.
Oh.
Yet.
Breaking news. Right? We didn't have time to order a plaque. So.
Fair enough. It was a little surprise or like.
Yeah. Right. So I think there's that one.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Now, I would invite you to say a few words, but I think you have some former colleagues who want first crack, so.
Absolutely. I always defer to my fellow.
Well, I definitely would like to say, Stephanie, it's been really just an honor as an elected official along with you. When you were a Linwood City Council member and I was, I guess, mayor at the time in Mukilteo, and you were always there. I appreciate you attending Snohomish County Cities and AWSC and being on boards like this and making a difference in our region. And I know most of us in the cities are nonpartisan, and we certainly try to take that to heart. And I know you're in a partisan position, but I've never seen you that way. You just always have a heart for your community, and I just appreciate that so much about you. And I'm glad that you're really not going anywhere. You're going to be working for us at the county and having our voice there as well. So just thank you so much for your dedication.
That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I want to thank all you've done. You got on the board the year I started as an alternate here. But I have really appreciated all you have done. Even to the day I was sitting there totally off in another world when you nominated me. Oh, wow, okay. But as you can look at the board today, you can probably see why I'm going to miss you even more. Well, yeah. I'm gonna have to talk to Christine. She's got to come in person. But appreciate everything you've done and good luck with your new role. That'll be interesting.
I look forward to still working with you in my new role.
Yeah, thank you.
Don, you got anything?
Yeah. I do. It's been an honor and a pleasure to work with Stephanie for over 12 years now. And Joe kind of said, but when I think of you, I think of collaboration, collaborative spirit, community spirit. Stephanie's one of those people that is always able to think of the bigger picture and then think of other communities, even though she was a county council member that represented a different district. She took a lot of care to Marysville needs on interval in the county council, in addition to obviously work on community transit. So I'll miss working with you in this capacity, but as others have said, really glad that you'll still be around and we'll look you up at the county still.
I'm counting on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Stephanie, there's only a couple of us left on the board that has been there as long as you. We started at the same time in 2010 as alternates, both of us. And I've always looked up to you and what you've done. You were a quiet voice on the board, but it seemed to me that every time you decided to say something, everybody kind of perked up and wanted to listen. And so I really appreciate everything you've done for community transit. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to do with Executive Summers.
Thank you, Pam.
I would just echo, I told Steph most of it outside that I won't repeat, but she is very much everything you all said, a quality vote, a very broad thinker, someone that respects other people's opinions. And I just think it's a big win that you're still going to be around and that working at the county. So all the best to you, and we're going to miss you here, but we know that you'll be working there. Okay, thank you.
You know how to find me. Always available.
We have a hand, Mayor Fizell.
Yes, so Stephanie, thank you for being my county council member. Thank you so much for the service you've given to Linwood, for the privilege I had of serving with you on Snohomish Health District Board. And Dave knows a good deal when he's got it. And I expect that he will work you to your bones. And we will all be much better off for it, because I know your passion, not just for the city that you represent, but all of Snohomish County. And we still need to get together for coffee, and we'll do that quite often, I hope. Thank you for your service.
Looking forward to coffee. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, and Councilmember Naring, I don't know if he's tried your shoes on yet, but Councilmember Naring.
Thanks, Joe. Well, I've had the chance to work pretty closely with Stephanie on the county council over the past 5 years or so, and just want to say how outstanding she's been as a community representative and as somebody to work with. It's just been a real joy to get to be a colleague of Stephanie's over the last few years and see the great work that she's done for our community and the great collaborative spirit. And I'm glad that she's not going too far. She'll still be in the same building. So look forward to continuing to work with you, Steph.
Thanks, Nate. I appreciate your friendship. It's been really special. So I look forward to continuing to work together.
And we have Councilmember Payne.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, Councilmember Wright, it's been great seeing you in action on this board and out there in the community, and representing transit and other issues much broader for Edmonds and South Snohomish County. You've done a lot of really heavy lifting for us in many different arenas, and I just am glad you're not going very far. I guess, congratulations on your new role, and I hope it is as exciting as it sounds. So I hope we stay in touch, and congratulations and thank you for all your service.
Thank you. And I look forward, we will definitely be still working together.
Mayor Matsumoto, right?
Yes, well, I just wanted to say congratulations, Stephanie. I know you're not going to go far, and I know that we're going to be seeing each other, and I just didn't want this time to go without me saying, yay, Stephanie!
I love you, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, is anybody else in the room?
I'm going to say a little bit, and some of it's going to be my disappointment that we never got to work together more. I joined the board just as the pandemic came in, and we did everything on Zoom. And now that the pandemic is leaving and we're getting together, you're leaving to go on to other things. But congratulations on your new job, and perhaps we will meet up in the future in your new role. So thank you.
Thank you. And absolutely, we'll get together in this new role and take it from there. So look forward to it.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, tell us maybe a little bit, what is your new role?
I'm the Executive Policy Officer for Executive Summers. So that'll be a lot of federal agenda, state agenda, transit, transportation, PSRC, other duties as assigned, local governments. So if there's anything that interests you guys or you think would gel with Executive Summers office, please reach out. So
We'll be calling you about annexation.
I think everybody just had an idea pop through their head.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call her about this, and feel free. You wouldn't be the first one. So, and I'm looking forward to it because of our relationships. That's part of the job. That's part of what attracted me, was continuing to work on the same book of work that I've been so passionate about, getting to work with people like you, and continuing these relationships and everything that we've built. So that's why I took this job.
You're going to be great at it. So thank you again for staying involved, and Godspeed.
So if you got a minute, I got to talk to you about.
Exactly.
All right.
May I just briefly just say
Absolutely.
thank you? Because I want to thank everybody. I know everybody's heard this before, but community transit is my favorite committee. And I know it's redundant. You guys have all heard it, but I come from Linwood. And it was always a squabble, sit nose. I mean, you Stanwood now, but you were Linwood before. You know, those big city seats, everybody wanted one. You know, we had Marysville, Edmonds, Linwood. And when I was on Linwood City Council, first there was a battle to even be the CT person or alternate, and then you had to actually get on the board here. So I never thought I would be able to be on CT until I got to the county council. The secret is it was easier to get on the county council than the CT board because it's so popular and everybody wants to be here. So, so for me, I've just seen so much, and it's been so exciting to be involved with everything that community transit's done over these 12 years. Yeah, I was trying to go for the longevity thing, but Kim and John, I think you guys had me beat like by a month. We all kind of came in 2010. So I'm counting on you guys. I was joking with John in the lobby earlier that he comes with the building. So we'll see which one of you outlasts. I think there's a prize involved. And then Joe, I mean, you just keep coming back. So I think you're going for the, you know, broken up with the longevity award that way. So, but everybody here on this committee lands here because we're passionate. We care about our communities. We care about transit. So for me to be able to land here and be involved in all of this, even though when I did first land here, we were cutting service. I mean, it was about Sunday service and service cuts, and we hadn't even got to the part about how are we building things back. But the thing is people were still passionate even under those times to be here. And now that we've kind of gotten through that, I mean, it was about the blue line when I first got here. And now we've got the green line and the orange line, and essentially a whole rainbow coming down the pipe. And that, you know, I think about all those trips to DC, and I was thinking of Melissa earlier today. So she's always shepherded us to DC and, you know, asked politely for money and all of those things. And just, you know, all those pieces that came to fruition under us being involved in CT. Prop 1, the build outs that we're able to do, putting back Sunday service. But it's because I've worked with a passionate group of board members, but also a passionate group of employees. I mean, this is one of the groups, the longevity awards is always one of my favorite parts of our meetings. just because it recognizes people that have been here so long. And there's always so many of them because people stick around. When you come into community transit, you stay here because you feel the passion. You stay here because we get stuff done. And I just wanted to say thank you to the staff and everybody else who's passionate and brings that every day. So, and then I had a couple, I said, Melissa, I want to shout out to Claudia for when I was committee chair and all this stuff, for managing my chaos, and Deb for knowing everything. So she is the goddess of this agency and she knows everything, so I never forget it. And there's so many other shout outs, so I'm going to forget somebody, so I'll leave it there. But thank you for allowing me the opportunity to at least just express my appreciation and thanks for being involved in such a great organization. And then just leave you with my commitment, whatever I can do for community transit in my next role, any role I ever hold, I will always do it because I want to see community transit succeed. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully we'll see you in October when we kick off our new pilot project.
Absolutely.
All righty.
Look forward to it.
Excellent. Let me grab one.
All right, and then come back up. Yeah, next up, speaking of which, that was a great segue to Employee Service Awards. Stephanie's favorite part of the meeting.
Exactly. So we have another very special guest with us today, and that's Danny Julienne. Would you please join me up here at the podium? Danny. It's so fun to have you and Kathleen here together and to have you here for the same reason, just a month apart from each other. This is fantastic. So Danny is here celebrating 25 years with community transit. And that is truly, truly a milestone. And I think most of you are aware that she and Kathleen are very close allies in the leadership of our local 1576 ATU local, and they do a tremendous job representing the employees. They do a tremendous job working with management to address employee issues around compensation, around wages, around benefits, around safety. And it's not just a role that they play, it's a labor of love. And it's truly a passionate commitment to the welfare of our employees and the success of our agency. So we're very happy to have you here. I'm often sort of quizzing myself after a meeting with Kathleen and Danny. Now, which one is the good cop and which one is the bad cop? Because I can never quite tell. So anyway, I'm honored to recognize you today. Danny started as a coach operator in 1997. She's been a part-time operator and a full-time operator, and she's spent the bulk of her time here with us in the union leadership position I described. After she graduated, her youngest daughter graduated from high school. Danny went back to college while also working full-time. She finished her bachelor's degree in safety management from Central Washington in 3 years. Partially funded using the tuition reimbursement program here at CT that was up for renewal just a couple of months ago. She recruited her younger brother, Perrin Hopkins, to become a coach operator here at CT. Is that him over there? Thank you, Perrin, for being here and for your service to the county. He's now been here 15 years? 16. So, you know, a couple more years and you'll see him up here again for this kind of recognition. She's immensely proud of her Million Mile Driving Award and for being a strong voice for our employees, as I mentioned. She has a really encyclopedic understanding of the work that our employees do. She's got incredibly powerful empathy. She really understands the day-to-day issues people are dealing with out there and the key success factors that bear on whether an employee comes in and is able to be successful and do their best work or not. And I really value that in our relationship. Jim Williams, Deputy Director in Transportation, has remarked that Danny has made CT better in a lot of ways, citing her attention to detail, understanding employee issues, her participation in responses in the grievance process, her problem-solving ability, her focus on safety, emergency response, both before or during and before the pandemic. She's a talented artist. She's always looking for new art projects. That's something I just learned in this moment. I'm going to have to follow up with you on that. She enjoys new adventures with her 3 beautifully young grandchildren, 1 boy and 2 girls. She and her husband are currently caring full-time for her 93-year-old mother-in-law and enjoy the time they're spending with her. Danny is well-liked, well-respected by her coworkers and everybody she considers here to be part of her family. So congratulations again, Danny.
Thank you so much.
Do we have a pen? Oh, it's over here. Sorry. I always look for it over here. All right, there you go. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
I would just like, I would like to say thank you for those kind words. When I came to this job in 1997, I was a young widow raising 2 girls on my own, and I was looking for a job that I could have good benefits and good pay and stick with for a long time and raise my family. And it's become so much more than that. So I'm really honored to have worked here for 25 years to serve my community, the agency, my fellow drivers, and to be able to take care of my family. So thank you so much.
You're still up, I think. Anything strategic plan?
All right. Thanks again, Danny. Thanks again, Steph. Congratulations and good luck. We'll be in touch. Great. Well, I think the next thing on the agenda is our safety and security strategic plan update and presentation. And I wanted to say a few words by way of introduction. The board has been very engaged in these issues since the beginning of the year. This is the #1 issue we hear about from our employees. And it's one of the top tier issues we hear about from our customers. And as we think about coming out of the pandemic and rebuilding our ridership and bringing our customers back to the system, addressing safety and security in a comprehensive way and making sure we're providing a quality and safe environment for our riders and our employees has got to be priority 1. And the board has made that clear from the get-go. And so we are very excited today to present to you our proposed 5-year safety and security plan. This is directly responsive to employee input, to board input, to some of the practices we've experimented with over the last 6 months or so to increase our presence in the field. And ultimately will be reflected in the 2023 budget that we advance to the board for consideration next month. So with that introduction, I want to recognize Mark and his team to present the plan.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rick, and thank you to members of the board. As Rick just alluded to, I am happy and excited to welcome the Safety, Security, and Sustainability Department into the operations umbrella. Historically, our partnership since my arrival here at CT has grown, especially with our Swift Safety initiative that we have put in place back in the spring. It has proven to be beneficial to both our customers as well as our employees alike. It has been met with raving and positive reviews. As we move forward into the future, it's critically important that we evolve our relationship. And really, this is the crux of that effort in evolving our relationship that much further. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief, but once again, we are thrilled to have Jacob along with Don Burr onto the operations umbrella. And with that said, I'd like to ask Jacob Peltier to walk you through the plan.
A little bit shorter than him, so you gotta bear with me here. Good afternoon, board. Jacob Peltier, Manager of Security and Emergency Management. It's good to see you again. 2 months in a row, I feel so lucky. As Mark talked about, we have moved under the operations team under his leadership, joining our colleagues in transportation, maintenance, and facilities. And we really think that that partnership will continue to grow and result in really better operational support in the field. And so we look forward to continuing to grow our partnership. We certainly grew close over COVID, I can tell you that much. So, as Mark talked about, and Rick talked about, this plan has really been a long time in the making and really calls for a substantial investment in security over the next 5 years. With initially looking at also launching a new position of transit security officers in 2023, which I'll talk about more as we progress. Launching a new security operations center to ensure that there's 24/7 coordination across our system. And ensure that people can reach us 24/7 if they have security concerns. And then the plan calls for expansion of our transit police unit as well to continue that valuable partnership. So I will touch on that as well. Really how we came about this plan is it started back in 2018, believe it or not. And we started looking at how can we look strategically as we're growing the agency and looking at these transit development plans and the anticipated growth and what do we need to be doing to make sure we're right-sizing security for the organization. And we paused that work because of the pandemic, and then we started that work early last year. In addition to that, we did several rounds of feedback from different organizations. We did a TSA base assessment where the Transit Security Administration comes out and looks at our security posture and compares us to what they consider to be good practices in the transit industry. They do this free of charge to about 200 transit agencies across the country every year. Then we brought in an independent expert, Centricon, to be able to do an independent assessment of our security posture. That they also interviewed all the directors, key managers, frontline staff, union partners, to really make sure they're looking holistically and understanding from an independent lens what we would need to be meeting contemporary practices in security. We looked at employee and customer feedback. And then lastly, we did a security internal business needs assessment, where we kind of looked at what do all the departments across the entire company need from security, and how can we make sure that that our internal partners are getting what they need to be successful as well. So the plan calls for really multiple strategies, and you can see a list of them here over the next 5 years. Some of those strategies you guys have already previously approved, like rules of conduct and the social worker program. And other things are new, like the transit security officers and the security operations center. So I'll spend the bulk of this presentation on the transit security officers, security operations center, and transit police, because that represents the biggest financial investment as we roll out the plan. But I'm certainly more than willing to answer questions or talk about any of the topics on here as well, if there's anything that interests you. I'll also say that all of these strategies were also reviewed with frontline staff. We did focus groups with frontline staff. We brought in some of our union partners to make sure that really before we got too far down the planning track, that we were heading in the right direction, that these strategies really worked operationally for the people in the field, and that there wasn't any major gaps that they felt like we needed to be adding in the areas that we weren't addressing. So we really want to make sure that at the end of the day, it works for the boots on the ground, as they say. So here at Community Transit, we take a multi-tiered approach to security response, as well as security reporting. And on this diagram, you see at the top, you have customers, on the bottom, you have transit police. And generally speaking, the lower on the diagram you go, the more knowledge, skills, ability, and training it requires to be successful in that position. It also generally costs more money, because that person needs to have more knowledge, skills, abilities, and training to be successful in their job. And so it starts with our customers. We rely on our customers to see something and to say something, to let us know when there's conduct happening on our bus that's not acceptable, or they may see something that's suspicious. Then it goes to our frontline employees and contractors, our coach operators, service ambassadors, even facilities and IT and other staff who work in the field, to make sure that they are communicating our rules, that they're being a good presence on our system, And when needed, calling for assistance if they encounter something that requires a higher level response. We have a social worker program, which we're in the final process of working with the county to implement, which you've been previously briefed on. We have our field supervisors, which are vital to be able to respond to our approach operators and help both support them, but also, ask people to get off the bus if they're really struggling with following our rules of conduct. Then we have the new position of transit security officers, which are really designed to be able to fill that gap between kind of the customer service positions that are the field supervisors and other frontline staff, and law enforcement, which is the transit police. So trying to find that happy middle ground of being able to have a higher level response to be able to mitigate issues, but at the same time reserving our law enforcement resources for crimes and other things that require more specialized skills and training. So really, I'm going to talk about these three topics one by one. First, it starts with the transit security officers, and really similar to our law enforcement partners, they do require somebody with a lot of different knowledge, skills, ability, background clearance, training, and ability to defend themselves and defend others. And we really think this is going to be an important step in being able to provide both a more visible presence on our system, but also more personnel who are able to exclude people from our system, like the transit police do, if they violate our rules of conduct or violate other policies. In addition to that, the plan calls for a steady growth of that over the next 5 years. Initially, next year, our goal, depending on how recruitment and retention goes, is to ramp up to the point where we have a 24/7 response in the field and 24/7 presence in the field. And then we anticipate this eventually growing to the point where we'll have up to about a dozen transit security officers on duty at any one point, spread throughout our system and spread throughout our services. But again, that will kind of slowly increase in time over that 5-year period. Starting in 2023, should you adopt the budget. Then we have our Security Operations Center, or our SOC. Really, that is to ensure that we are coordinating security incidents across our system, across our multiple lines of service, with both directly operated service, but also our contract service providers, that people are able to reach security. You'd be amazed how many times I get a call at 1 a.m. I don't know why you call me, I need to sleep. So we want to be able to ensure that our internal and our external customers and stakeholders are able to reach security anytime, and that we're there to be able to assist them and deploy the right resources to their unique situation. Whether that's working with our partners in transportation to get a field supervisor out there, whether that's sending a security officer, or whether that's requesting law enforcement presence. So we anticipate that next year that would be operational on a 24/7 basis. Lastly, the proposal means to expand our transit police unit to be able to really double the size, the coverage that they provide. So currently our transit police unit have a 2-person minimum, meaning there's 2 deputies minimum on duty, and they cover from 5 a.m. to midnight is what their current coverage is, 7 days a week. The strategic plan calls for eventually making that so it's 4 deputies instead of 2 deputies, and then making that 24/7 instead of only 5 a.m. to midnight. Obviously, the sheriff's office is experiencing staffing challenges as we all are, so they're not able to immediately accommodate that. But we have, I think, firm commitment from the sheriff's office leadership that when their staffing levels are better, we all are on the same page that we need to grow to meet really the growing transit industry that we have. As far as proposed timeline, we did a presentation last month at Finance Performance and Oversight. We'll obviously presenting to you today. We'll continue to do our SWIFT safety audits, our SWIFT safety emphasis through December and potentially into next year to buy us time until we are able to recruit and train security officers to help supplement our existing staffing levels. We anticipate our 2023 budget proposal to be presented in October to include some budget to be able to implement the strategic plan. And assuming that you adopt that, we would then begin recruiting transit security officers in 2023. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Jacob. Any questions? Yes, Mayor Neri.
First of all, I want to thank Jacob and Mark and Rick for putting this together. This is great to see. It's been a big priority, I know, for a lot of folks within the agency, and I think us as a board as well. Could you, and I apologize if I should know this, explain to me what exactly a transit safety officer, how long it takes to train them up, and then what exactly they can do that, say, an officer could, what they can do that, say, we would need an officer to do.
What they can do instead of what the police officer would do?
Yeah, I guess what's their role versus what we would require from a deputy.
Right, okay, understand. So I think that we are very soon going to recruit an assistant manager in security and a supervisor to help support this expansion. And with that, we're also going to develop a detailed curriculum to ensure that our security officers are prepared. So I think it's a little bit to be determined what the final training time will be. Historically, in my experience in similar environments, you typically have a couple weeks of hands-on training, and then you have to kind of see if they're able to do the job. After they go through that training, after shadowing, similar to law enforcement FTO programs, field training officer programs, very similar. You put them with a more senior officer who, show them how to do it, then do it with them, and then watch them do it to see if they're successful. And then we'll give them time to do it on their own and see if that success continues. So I would imagine at a minimum, we're talking a couple week training period. As far as how transit security officers would be different than law enforcement, right now our transit police unit often respond to issues that are not really crimes. They're policy violations. And I think what we have found over the course of the last year or so, especially with the legislative changes that have occurred, is that it's difficult for some of our law enforcement partners to really be proactive when it comes to something that's not really clearly a crime. And there's not a clear public interest for law enforcement to take action. So in that case, this is where security officers would be able to step in and actually issue an exclusion. Currently, right now, the only people in our agency that are authorized to issue exclusions from services more than like a single trip really is the transit police unit. And so that's the gap that we're trying to fill, is provide more people that can do the policy level exclusions. And then also be able to respond as well if there is crimes and they're closer by, and they can help provide an initial response while transit police come from wherever they are in the two counties we cover. Does that answer your question?
Very much, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Schwedding?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Our ambassadors, do they wear badges or vests or anything? And the reason I asked, I read an article this morning about Sound Transit and their ambassadors, and in it mentioned the pink hats they wore or something. So I was just curious if our ambassadors are marked or wear something.
Yeah.
How do you tell?
Yeah, I will try my best, and Molly can certainly jump in to fix my mistakes when I mess it all up. They do wear uniforms that have community transit logos, and hats often that have community transit logos. So they're clearly marked that they're a community transit employee.
Okay, excellent. Because I know I've talked about our security being definitely.
Yes.
That will make a difference when you've got a bunch of kids on the bus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Dodger.
So in your explanation to Mayor Naring, you said something about exclusion. Is exclusion in this context the same or equal to trespass?
Yes, it'd be the equivalent of a civilian version or a non-criminal trespass. So we as a civil authority are telling them they can't be on our property. The only difference there is if a transit police officer actually tells them that and they violate that, they can be immediately arrested potentially, versus if an employee did that, including a security officer, it's not enough from a legal standpoint to be able to prosecute them. It has to be a law enforcement officer that tells them you can't be on somebody's property. That's the only difference. You're welcome.
All right, anybody else with any questions? Okay, I have one, and also I want to say thank you to Don as well for I know your work on this. So, Jacob, Back when I was on the board before and I was on the Sound Transit Board, there was an incident down at the King County Metro Transit Tunnel where a young girl was getting beat up by a couple of other people and was being picked up by somebody's phone or something. And the problem is there were a couple of security guards there with clearly marked security on their jacket, and they didn't do anything. And the public, of course, was outraged. Why didn't they do anything? Well, they're like, well, we can't. And so my concern is if we're putting people out there with security on, with the expectation that they can get involved, if they can't, all they can really do is call the police and then wait. It's frustrating. And I don't know how you get around that, but to the point of Councilmember Schweddy, she wants them marked. I'm not so sure because it creates an expectation that they might be able to step in when they can.
Yeah, great question. I'm very familiar with the incident that I believe you're describing in the King County Metro Tunnel. We anticipate that they will be in uniforms to make very clear that there's security and that there's security with community transit versus security with a different transit authority. Pending our directors being okay with the anticipated uniform, they will be very visible from a distance, that it's clear that there's somebody in a uniform on a bus or on our property. We have been in discussions with legal counsel as well as our insurance agency, WISTIP, about anticipating that they would be able to use physical force to defend themselves or defend others from a direct physical assault. So if we took a similar incident with the King County Metro Tunnel, where they're visibly seeing somebody being attacked by somebody else, they would be able to, pending those ongoing discussions and pending a final policy that Rick is comfortable with, be able to use reasonable force to be able to stop that threat and detain that person temporarily until transit police or other law enforcement partners are able to respond and be able to take over the scene from there and decide what is best. So, and to be blunt, I asked for that for the exact same reason you did, because I think that it sets up a false sense of security if you have somebody there with that level of uniform and that level of tools on them and they just stand there and watch. That's not going to help.
Literally a false sense of security. It says security, right?
100%, sir. 100%.
So thank you. I appreciate, and hopefully those talks will go well and they will be able to use hands-on because that's what people would expect. So hopefully that goes well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think, like, any type of force, there's some liability here we'll incur as an agency, and we'll have to work through that liability. But at the end of the day, we drive buses every day and incur liability. So that kind of comes with an agency our size.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Or?
I just, if I may, just briefly, first of all, thank you so much for your report and what you're doing. I have to say that aside from the riding public, which is our #1 priority, I'm really afraid of the next, for example, 6 months, where we're doing something now in public transit that we've never done before. We are asking each and every person, come on. Don't worry about any fare. You don't have to, and furthermore, we're not going to really exclude you from riding. Should you create a little disturbance today, just come on back on. We're not asking for identification. We're not checking backgrounds or anything like that. Of course, we can't do all of that. But I worry for the riders, for the public that are just trying to get transportation. I also really worry about the transit operators. I have heard, and this union has heard, reports from operators, not just here, in other agencies, where individuals are getting on, misbehaving, seriously taking drugs, and they don't care. And now it's, hey, don't worry about that fare. Come on. No identification, no responsibilities whatsoever. And I worry so much. I drove 36 years, 3 million safe miles, thank God. I know I bring that up often, but I've never had this kind of an experience that the operators here and other public transit agencies are going to encounter. And I can't imagine how I would handle it. I'm not a strong guy, I never was. I have that accent that people think maybe he does have room for 3 bodies in his trunk. But, and I don't mean to be, overly nervous about this, but this union is very concerned about its employees. We have good employees here. Throughout this system, we are blessed. Good people in this room, good people in this agency. And I know you've all often heard me say that, and I mean it. Anyhow, Jacob, I hope the future isn't going to be as bad as I fear it may be, but thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lon. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe you're referring to the youth fair that's being implemented, board member? Yeah.
Yes.
Because I want to reassure you and the public and the employees that we will continue to enforce our fair policies and collect fares from adults. So that'll be a big part of this. But the comment I wanted to make, though, just building on Jacob's presentation and the discussion, great questions, by the way. This is a new endeavor, right? We're creating a new unit to respond to the #1 issue our employees have brought to us. I agree. I couldn't agree more. The union is concerned, the employees are concerned, we're concerned, and we're taking action. And that's what this plan is today. There's going to be some learning as we go forward. We're going to need the board's help in terms of oversight and iteration as we define the safety role for these individuals. But we identified a gap between the transit police and the service personnel, and we're trying to fill the gap with transit security officers. So we're gonna figure it out as we go. We're gonna act with prudence, but we're gonna establish and maintain that presence in the field throughout the hours in which we're in operation every day. What we've learned over the last 6 to 8 months as we've responded to conditions in the SWIFT corridor is that just maintaining a physical presence on board our service and at our facilities makes a huge difference. We'll be able to address the bulk of the issues that are out there in the field with this approach. There may be an incident like the one you described. Hopefully those incidents don't occur, and if they do, they're extremely rare. But those are going to be the times when we're going to have to make sure the partnership between the TSOs and the deputies is super tight, and the response times are as quick as we can get them. And that's the role that Emergency Operations Center will play in doing that coordination. So I just want to sort of reemphasize the fact that this is new territory for us. We're making an extra investment in safety for our employees and our customers, and we're going to be back with you at regular intervals, letting you know how it's going and getting your input and advice as we shape the program. So thank you for listening today, and that concludes my comment.
I have one more question.
Yes,
You said
Councilman.
this before, but, and I may have just missed this, but have there other transit agencies that have done something similar to this?
Well, I may ask for some help from the staff. I know that there are similar models in use here in the region. Sound Transit uses a combination of contracted security and contracted police the way we do. King County Metro does the same thing. The pattern is that there aren't enough deputies and officers to provide the coverage that's necessary. So, we looked at a contracted model and decided that it would be a better approach for us to use direct employees so that we could maintain management control, set expectations for performance, oversee the training and whatnot. I would look at Jacob and Mark and Don to respond to what else is going on industry-wide and how this approach compares to other players within the industry.
Yeah, when we looked at other transit agencies regionally and across the US, when we did some pure benchmarking, 100% of the other transit agencies we looked at had security. Not 100% had transit police. Some had transit police, some did not. Obviously varying depending on the size of the transit agency, but it really is more and more standard practice to have a security officer to supplement your law enforcement needs. I'm on an after working group for security, and one of the things we do is talk around the table of what's happening in the industry across the United States, including with very large transit agencies, and the theme is the same. Everybody is looking for ways to supplement law enforcement, and ways to provide a more customer service centered position that still has the ability to implement consequences for violating the rules of conduct or what the agency's rules are. Also, a lot of transit agencies, including King County Metro and Sound Transit, are also doing social workers as well. They all use a variety of techniques. Some use contracts, some use employees. But in our research at a local level, most of the agencies that are using contractors have enough difficulties that it caused us to pause and not really want to pursue that.
Yeah, just that one thing. Yeah, so in our experience back east at New York City Transit, their equivalent of Swift over there is called Select Bus Service. Same kind of process as relates to off-board fare collection. The Department of Security enacted a group called the Eagle Team. When I floated that idea here, these guys didn't like the Eagle Team name, but in any event, it was their job to not only enforce the fare through confirmation of receipt possession by our customers back east. It was also to be there if minor crimes were to be taking place on board our buses and supplement the efforts of NYPD. There was no separate transit police in New York City. That was abolished about 20 years ago. So there is a transit unit within the NYPD that we worked with, along with the Department of Security and the Eagle Team, to ensure the safety of our customers back east. So, that's just one example of a very large transit agency and how they addressed similar conditions.
All right, Lance?
Mark, just one question. You mentioned fare enforcement.
Yes.
This is not going to be any fare.
No. This is a little different here, but I'm just giving you an example of what was going on back east. All right.
I just add one quick comment in relation to it. We are putting in our position description the ability to enforce fare. Should in the future our agency decide that we need to supplement our existing law enforcement efforts with more fare enforcement, we have some options to pursue that in the future if we so choose. But that's not something we're planning on implementing next year when we roll out the positions.
All right, thank you, Jacob. And before we start, since I have the opportunity of a bully pulpit, I too worry, like you, Mr. Norton, about the future. Mayor Naring, a number of mayors in Snohomish County have got an open letter to the legislature asking them to give the tools back to our officers when they are not allowed to arrest people openly doing drugs on our streets. They're going to do drugs at the bus stops. They're going to do drugs on the bus. Who would have ever thought that we would see people literally taking items and just walking right out of our stores, knowing there's not much that can be done. So if law enforcement's hands are tied, the bad people always test your security. They're going to do what they can get away with. And my concern is that right now it might be fine with somebody sitting there with a community transit vest on and they're like, oh, okay, we don't want to hassle. But more and more as they test that, they won't do anything. They can't do anything. They'll do worse things. Then you have to step it up. So I hope it all works. But until we can get the legislature to allow the tools back in our officers' hands to do their job, we end up having to be that bridge, that gap. It will come, right? So I appreciate not only our CEO listening to us and saying this, we need to do something, listening to the employees who quite frankly are worried and what they see every day. And I know I had an opportunity to ride with you as well. And so just thank you all. We take it seriously. We're going to probably have to put more money in that, but it has to be done. So if the public is going to have any sort of, we're going to lose ridership. If they're afraid to ride the buses, they won't ride. And it just becomes a spiral. So anyway, thank you. Thank you for taking it serious. your CEO report. You're gonna cover security or?
Yeah, well, thank you for that discussion. That's, appreciate that. It's a big investment and it's a plan that's been developed through a really robust interactive process. So more to come next month. Okay, shifting gears to CEO report, a few things to highlight here before we get to our action items and committee reports. I wanted to share some positive news out of the chute that we just learned this week from the American Public Transportation Association, that we've won a grand award, AdWheel Award, through the AdWheel Marketing Awards competition for our marketing campaign to recruit coach operators and for workforce development. So that's great news. We're doing some really amazing creative work through Molly's group with Jennifer Jeter. Oh, and there's some visuals up on the screen of the creative campaign, and this has been disseminated through a variety of media and digital channels, and has been a big part of our recruiting efforts.
You have a trademark on desk ditchers?
I don't know. Molly? No trademarks. Anyway, this award will be presented at the APTA conference in a few weeks in October. That's going to be in Seattle. So I know some of you will be there and we'll have an opportunity to join in that recognition. So Molly, Jennifer Jeter, our marketing manager, and the whole creative team, congratulations to them. As board member Norton indicated, the youth fair goes into effect this very day across the region. I believe you'll see an article in the Herald tomorrow talking about how it's going to work here in Snohomish County. So it's exciting, and it too is a learning opportunity as we invite kids to ride free across the county. Mark participated last week in a press event down at King County with all the transit agencies to talk about the fact of it and how it's going to work. And so we're aligned with the region, and we're going to see how it goes. So hopefully it's an opportunity to provide another resource for parents and for kids to help make their lives work, and to help kids get from where they are to where they want to be. So we'll find out. Some events and activities to report on briefly. We just had the annual Washington State Transit Association conference in Spokane. We had a number of people attend. Nuria Fernandez, our FTA administrator, was there. Jake Fye, Senator Leas, a number of other elected officials were there to celebrate and talk about the Move Ahead Washington package. The great thing about this conference is it was the first in-person WISTA conference since before the pandemic, which means that our employees were able to participate in the rodeo activities. And CT gave a great accounting of itself. We had folks that entered in the driving competitions and the maintenance competitions, and we brought home some hardware there as well. So it was great to see our employees have an opportunity to get out and compete with their peers from other transit agencies around the state. August 16th, I had an opportunity to join board member Mayor Thompson in Bothell, along with a number of other officials and Senator Maria Cantwell to celebrate the city's receipt of a RAISE grant from USDOT, which will pay for the Bothell Way Improvements Project. And that is the right-of-way for the Green Line extension from Canyon Park Transit Center into downtown Bothell. So that means that we're going to be able to move up the timeline for implementing our extension of the Green Line. And that too, you will see reflected in the proposed 2023 budget. So that's great news. We were planning that project to occur whenever that Bothell Way set of improvements could be implemented by the city. And the availability of new infrastructure funding is allowing that to move ahead of schedule. So that's fantastic news. It'll allow the Green Line to serve downtown Bothell and also to integrate with Sound Transit's Stride BRT service that will operate on SR 522 and Interstate 405. So those services will integrate and open at the same time as a result of this grant. So that's great news. We also, you've enjoyed the new building so far. We've been hosting tours of Snohomish County partners. I had two transit GMs here today, Tom Hinkson from Everett and Les Reardons from Whatcom. We had a great time hosting, and a couple weeks prior, I hosted Gary Clark from EASC on a tour and said, you know, if you're ever looking for a place to hold an EASC meeting, you know, feel free to use the facility. He's like, great, thanks. 2 days later, he texted me. And last week, they held an in-person, the first in-person Board of Trustees meeting for EASC in this room. And unfortunately, I was taking my son to college, so I couldn't participate, but Deb was here, and apparently they had a great time. And I think some of you may have participated as well. So hopefully we'll see more of that. Speaking of EASC, I've been invited to join the Board of Trustees for a fly-in to DC the week after next. So we'll be meeting with our congressional delegation, visiting USDOT, FTA, and a number of other federal agencies. So looking forward to that. We have an event coming up with the region called Week Without Driving. You've probably heard of it before, the week of September 19th to 25th. Community Transit will participate in the Week Without Driving, sponsored by Disability Rights Washington. And it's an opportunity to encourage elected leaders and transportation professionals, transit providers to work with the community to show what it can be like to go through a week without depending on a car. So I'll be participating as a cycle commuter and encouraging other members of senior management of Roland to participate as well and highlight the value of transit and living without a car and what the lived experience is for the disability community here in Snohomish County and around the region. Quick touch on the Everett and CT consolidation study. There's an action item on the agenda today. Just wanted to remind the board that we did receive transit consolidation grant from WashDOT under the Move Ahead Washington package to help fund some additional technical work to define an integrated Snohomish County transit network, and that's great news. The next meeting of our joint policy committee will be on the 7th next week. Wanted to touch on recruiting and staffing and the implications of the labor market for where we are with service. You're all very familiar with our TDP. We have the TDP on the action agenda today as well. It's an interesting time for the transit industry and all agencies and companies involved in transportation and logistics. The labor market is affecting everyone across the board. It was really the #1 topic at the WISTA conference this past weekend. Well, the #1 topic was everybody being happy to get back together in person. But right after that, it was hiring. It's just a really tough labor market, and no one's really seen conditions like this before. So I want to give you a couple of data points just to illustrate what I'm talking about. The APTA, the National Transit Association, as you know, did a survey recently of member organizations on this issue and found that 90% of the organizations providing transit nationwide are struggling with recruitment. About 2/3 are struggling with retention. And many are experiencing excessive levels of turnover and are considering service reductions as a result. Nationally, 88% of school districts don't have enough yellow bus drivers. And judging from what we're seeing on the airline side, there's issues there as well. So this is a macroeconomic phenomenon that's affecting us. Here locally, this year, we've hired 87 people so far this year. We've promoted another 50. We've lost 57 people to regular attrition. Many of those are retirements. Our workforce is older than the average population, and many transit agencies are facing that situation. So we're treading water and gaining slightly on the staffing challenge. Our situation is echoed across the region. My colleague down at Pierce Transit, Mike Griffiths, reported they've hired 85 people so far this year and they've lost 8. So he's net 5. He's down still 40 drivers. Kitsap Transit is down 30 drivers and is considering service reductions. So this is the challenge of our time. right as we're on the cusp of trying to grow service, to get ready for light rail coming, to entice our employees back to the service. It's not a funding issue. We have plenty of resources. It's not an equipment issue. We've got plenty of fleet and great facilities, and we're investing in improving our facilities, as you know. It's the availability of labor to grow the service. So we're able to provide the service we've committed to, but we're not providing it at the level of quality and reliability that we would like. We're making 96 to 97% of our trips on our directly operated service every day. Scoring 97% on a test is an A. But those other 3% means you may be leaving somebody on the side of the road. It may mean that somebody's going to miss an appointment or a pickup of a child because the bus didn't come. And you heard from Reyes today under public comment. The feedback lands on our customer service folks. On the contracted side, it's even more challenging. It's a smaller group, so the staffing issues affect them disproportionately higher. So you may have heard we've had some express bus challenges with the Sound Transit service, with the CT Express bus service. We're now in a conversation with Sound Transit about potentially tapering that service so that we can emphasize reliability over quantity. We're proceeding with the September service change as planned. So we'll maintain service at current levels. We've got a very aggressive hiring program in place. Cesar's doing a phenomenal job. And as you saw, we've got an award-winning marketing program attracting talent, and we're getting a lot of interest. The question really on my mind is, are we going to be able to establish the level of quality and maintain the level of quality we expect now? And how quickly are we going to be able to grow along our TDP expectations? So that's a lot of heavy stuff to share with the board today. I just want to signal to you that we're watching this very closely. We are going to, and Roland will bring this to the Strategic Alignment Committee at the next meeting, but we're going to start a Title VI process to review where we are with service in advance of the March service change next spring, to give ourselves some flexibility in case we have to adjust expectations. We're expecting to grow, but if the picture doesn't change on the hiring side, we may need to reflect on how quickly we can grow. So sharing that for visibility today with the board, and we'll be reporting on how this is going, at regular intervals as we go forward. Last but not least, budget. So we're just wrapping up preparation of the internal development of the budget. You've heard about that. Mary's done a terrific job with the budget team, and we are looking forward to presenting that in October. We'll have a budget presentation at the Finance, Performance, and Oversight Committee on the 21st, and the board workshop on October 28th to go over the budget with the full board. And then lastly, our audit exit conference has been scheduled for Friday the 23rd at 1:30. All of you should have received a meeting notice from Rachel on that. So that concludes my report. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I have it on good authority that Mr. Norton does not want to come back driving buses on weekends, but I could be wrong.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to committee reports. The executive committee met on Thursday, August 18th. Councilmember Schweddy, Councilmember Merrill, and Councilmember Godfrey and I attended. The CEO report was shared, very similar to what we heard. And the next executive committee is scheduled for September the 15th at 11:30. And so with that, what about the Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee, Councilmember Merrill?
Yes, the Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee meeting was held remotely over Zoom on Wednesday, August 17th at 2 p.m. The meeting was attended by Councilmember Merrill, Mayor Joe Marine, Councilmember Stephanie Wright, Labor Representative Lance Norton. The committee reviewed and forwarded 3 action items on today's board agenda. The resolution number 1722, adopting the 2022-2027 Transit Development Plan. This item will be presented by Sophie Luthen, with Long Range Planning Project Manager. We also talked about ITB number 2022-20-40, purchase of replacement paratransit buses. Todd Burris, Assistant Manager of Programs and Projects, will present this item. And then lastly, on the action item, we reviewed RFP 2022-078, task order for transit consolidation study. This item will be presented by Roland Behe, Director of Planning and Development. The committee reviewed and forwarded one item for today's consent agenda, RFP number 2022-65, data program support for awarding for the award of consulting services to Vendor Resource Data Inc. in the amount of $312,000, and cost is considered fair and reasonable for this project. The committee received an informal briefing from Director Behe on the status of the zero emission study. The next meeting of Strategic Alignment and Capital Development Committee is Wednesday, September 21st at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Merrill. The Finance Performance and Oversight Committee, Councilmember Schweitzer.
Okay, the Finance Performance and Oversight Committee met on Thursday, August 18th, 2022 via Zoom. Board members Christine Fetzel, John Nearing, Sid Roberts, and I attended. Consent items on the agenda today is approval of July 2022 monthly expenditures and payroll are items D through I on the agenda. Reports, safety and security update. The committee received this monthly safety and security update. Staff presented the safety security strategic plan. This informational presentation was shared earlier today on today's agenda. Quarter 1 2022 financial report. The unaudited financial report for quarter 1 2022 was presented to the committee and is included in your packet. July 2022 sales tax report. In July 2022, community transit collected approximately $16.1 million in sales tax revenue, approximately $292,000 more than budgeted. A copy of the report is included in your packet. July 2022 diesel fuel update and report. The budget team continues to closely monitor fuel costs. It appears that fuel prices have peaked and have begun falling as of July's report. The next Finance Performance and Oversight Committee meeting is scheduled at 2 p.m. Thursday, September 15, 2022 via Zoom.
All right, thank you, Councilor Schweitzer. All right, we have 9 items on our consent. Does anybody need to pull an item or have any questions on consent items?
I'll move approval if not.
All right, do we have a second? All right, we've got a motion and a second. Councilmember Schweitzer was the second. Oh, I heard somebody on my left. Oh, second. Fine, I can hear pretty good. All right, so is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I will pass unanimously, which brings us to our first action item. Resolution number 1722, adopting the 2022-2027 Transit Development Plan. Sophie Luthen.
Hey, thank you. Again, I'm Sophie Luthen, Long Range Planning Project Manager, also on the shorter side, and here to talk about the TDP. So let's see if this is working. Okay, Rachel told me what to do in this situation. Here we go. So the TDP is an annual 6-year plan. It's required by Washington state law. But beyond that, adopting the TDP is a pretty significant milestone for our agency annually. The TDP really provides a roadmap for how CT will strive to provide excellent service, while we also enhance safety, security, and sustainability. It outlines the initiatives that the agency will undertake in order to innovate and adapt in response to changing travel behavior, regional transit investments, and new technologies. Just a recap of the process to date. So we're wrapping up a process that started earlier this year with development of the plan by staff, review of the first draft of the plan by the SACD committee and the board, and then a public outreach process in July and August. And here we are, September 1st. The priorities in the
2022 to 2027 TDP haven't changed from the earlier draft that you all saw. And this is an exciting time for transit in Snohomish County. At the end of this plan horizon, community transit will have pivoted towards more personalized transit service that focuses more on local connections. We will have integrated with regional light rail, and we will have begun our transition towards a zero emission fleet technology. So a lot of exciting stuff. Recap of our financial picture. This is the one more notable change that we made since the original draft that we shared earlier this year. So we did revise our sales tax revenue forecast slightly. For 2022, we had forecasted over 12% growth year over year initially, and we revised that down to about 8.5% based on the actual sales tax collections that we've seen for the last few months. So still growth, but slowing down. And that said, the agency's financial priorities remain the same. We've got pretty robust programs that we're trying to achieve, and our modeling shows that the agency remains financially stable even with this adjusted revenue forecast. And then a recap of our service growth. So this hasn't changed from the earlier draft that you saw a couple months ago. Our service hours in 2024 reflect the latest draft 2024 network plan. So that's gone through pretty significant public outreach this year. I think you've heard about it a few times. And that plan is going to be coming back to the board later this year for further review. Then we're forecasting adding additional service in 2025 and 2026 that would lower some of the longer headways that we've got in our system. And then in 2027, we're assuming the launch of the Gold Line and kind of a small restructure of service in North Snohomish County around that. So a lot of big service changes coming down the pipe. And then we went through a public review process for the TDP in July and August, like I said. So folks had a few different ways that they could submit comments, email, phone, et cetera. And then we had a public hearing at last month's Board of Directors meetings. In total, we received 7 comments over email and 3 comments at the public hearing last month. And just a very high level summary, we got a lot of comments in support of increasing bus service, adding service to kind of different places, and then some suggested rider experience enhancements. And then we heard some concern about current service levels and a desire for us to restore bus service. There was also a corresponding SEPA action where the agency issued a determination of non-significance on the TDP, and we did not receive any comments on that DNS that was issued. Staff's recommendation is that the Board of Directors approve resolution number 17-22, adopting the final 2022 to 2027 transit development plan. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sophie. Any questions? Councilmember Schweddy.
Actually, I asked a couple. On page 40, it talked about the SWIFT digital signage. And I know all of us has been on the trains at the airport, and they have those digital things that tell you what the stops are and all of that. And I was just curious if what we're going to put on the SWIFT line is, what does that actually look like? I mean, because that's the only thing that I could think of.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have a ton more detail on that. I'm wondering if Roland or maybe Molly has and Tim, if you have any more info on that.
Hi there. We are working with Roland staff and specifically the SWIFT staff on several different kinds of design, not only on board the coaches, but also at wayside as well. So we'll be conducting some trials later this year and then making a selection to go forward with, starting with the orange line.
Oh, okay, real good. Thank you.
You bet.
My other question on the last page, 78. The last thing that was on there was the accident data. as long as I've been on the board, I'm not sure we've ever heard anything about the accidents. And I know this one had one death and over 20, close to 25 collisions, and then so many injuries. And I was wondering if at a board workshop, that somebody could cover that, because this was all for 2021. And I thought it was, I'd like to know whether the injuries were from the collisions or whether they were from somebody falling down the steps. And because we're doing so much with safety, and to me, I mean, if it's not, you know, somebody in a car ramming the bus, then what are the safety issues? And I wasn't sure because it just had collision, accident, injuries, but it wasn't specific at all. So if that would be possible.
Sure, we could schedule a briefing on safety metrics and safety performance and sort of show you some trend data and how we performed over time. It's something we watch very closely, obviously, every day.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm sure you do. I was just curious because I didn't know.
Yep.
And I have one last thing for the boards, and especially those who've only been on the board for a year or so. This was an incredible report. I have no idea how much time you guys went to put it together, but it covered everything that, and in a language that the board could understand with our varying backgrounds. And it's 78 pages long, guys, and takes several hours to read, but I would really, really recommend you have it printed off so that if it takes a few days or a week or whatever to read it, because it tells you everything about community transit and what we need to know as board people. So I really, really encourage you to do that. Thank you.
I can say as a relatively new employee, it was a great, great introduction to the agency. I feel like I learned a lot. So.
Well, I have to admit that I read it also, and it really cured my insomnia, so.
All right. Any other questions for Sophie or Tim?
Chair, I just had a quick clarification.
Okay.
About 99% sure I know the answer. This is a 6-year plan that's renewed yearly. Correct?
Yeah, correct. And it's the current year and then the following 5 years. And we'll be back next year with a fresh one.
Updated 6 year. All right, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the, what would be resolution number 17-22.
Second. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? I can't see the Zoom, but I don't know that there's, just in case there's a hand there. Okay, all right, all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that will pass unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up of our action item is ITB 2022-040, purchase of replacement paratransit buses. And we have Mike Swela with us.
Yeah, good afternoon, board members. Mike Swela, Deputy Director of Maintenance, standing in for Todd Burris this afternoon. So before you, and I don't have a slide, but maybe there is one. Before you is a request for the purchase of 11 paratransit buses to replace the 2017 model year ones that are going to be 6 years old and have about 160,000 miles on them when they're retired. It's part of our planned vehicle replacement for 2022 and our multi-year capital investment schedule. That's a mouthful. So staff proposes that we purchase these 11 paratransit buses. The buses will be the 14-passenger standard ones, and they're gasoline fueled. They'll be made using the Washington State Vehicle Contract number 06719 through Creative Bus Sales. The 2022 budget for Fund 41, the replacement reserve, includes sufficient budget authority to cover this vehicle purchase for project number 2212. With that, we request that the Board of Directors authorizes Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and purchase 11 paratransit buses using the State Vehicle Contract number 06719 with Creative Bus Sales. This purchase includes contingency, equipment changes, licenses, and fees for a not to exceed total amount of $1,652,725. Thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions on the purchase? Oh, that's right, Councilmember Schweik.
I'm sorry, it's not like I sat at home and wrote everything out. Because this actually didn't come in until I came and I took a tour today. My question is, when you're looking at selecting buses and what goes inside and all of that stuff, do you look at the coaches' seats? I don't know what you actually call them, coach operators.
Are you talking about for the operator or for the passengers?
No, the operators. And the
Yes.
reason I ask that is, my daughter is a chiropractor, and because I'm with Community Transit, we have talked several times, because she has clients who are coach operators that have a terrible time with the seats. And some have even said the older the bus is, I mean, they don't even get to work but 4 hours a day and they have to go home because of the seats and everything. And so I was talking to your wellness thing here and Jim, and I was asking him about that. And he said, yes, and it was all vehicles. It wasn't just our large buses, it was the smaller buses. And of course, he got kind of technical about the seat and everything. So when we're looking at that, are we looking at seats? Because you've got coach operators that are sitting for hours and hours and ending up going to doctors 2 and 3 times a week. And so I'm sure there must be something out there that says, okay, this are better seats, or can our coach operators, since the guy in wellness knew all about it, they must be talking and saying, hey, we've got a problem and it's all because of the seat we're sitting in all day.
Well, seats are definitely a big important topic for a coach operator, anybody who's going to be sitting in them for 4, 6, 8 hours. On the big bus side, they're a spec item. We went through a review process at the agency years and years and years ago and moved to this USSC seat. We're talking about reviewing that again and just seeing what else is on the market, because we've been on the same spec for so long. On the big bus side, we have a seat refurbishment program where they're programmed into I can't remember if it's 100,000 miles or X number of years or whatever it is, but at a very specific interval, we bring them in, we go through them, put in new bearings, new bushings, new cushioning, just make sure that they're built up and secure for that coach operator. On the paratransit side, it's also kind of a spec item. When you're buying, these are going to be Ford chassis, I want to say. But we switch back and forth between Ford and Chevy chassis. And so as you go to order the vehicles, there's lists of options. You kind of get to pick through a menu. If you've never bought a new vehicle, it's kind of a similar process, right? If you want the seat with the upgraded padding, do you want the armrests, all that sort of thing. So we do go through and put in quite a bit of effort to make sure we get something that's going to be supportive.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Schweddy. I was surprised that wasn't covered in the TDP. Everything about transit, but not the seats. All right, any other questions in regard to this? Nobody hands online. All right, is there a motion? Oh, wait, do we? No. We need a motion on this yet. All right.
So I will move that the Board of Directors authorize the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and purchase 11 paratransit buses using state vehicle contract number 06719, ITB number 2022-40 with Creative Bus Sales. This purchase includes contingency, equipment changes, licenses, and fees for a not to exceed total amount of $1,652,725.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Councilmember Merrill, second by Councilmember Schweddy. Any discussion on the motion? All right. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That will pass unanimously. Which brings us to Director Behe and the RFP 2022-078 Transit Consolidation Study.
Roland Behe, Director of Planning and Development. So yes, award RFP 2022-078, task order for transit consolidation study. The board will remember being briefed last year in the fall about Everett City Council's request to Community Transit that we partner with them in the development of a transit consolidation plan. The plan would describe how Everett could annex into the public transit benefit area to enable implementation of an integrated transit network that would both provide a much higher level of mobility benefit for the city of Everett, but also for our mutual shared customers throughout the greater Snohomish County area. To this end, Community Transit partnered with Everett to assemble a joint policy committee that consists of representatives both from our board, including Mayor Marine and council members Daughtry and Merrill, as well as the mayor of Everett, 2 Everett City Council members. And that board, or that policy committee, has been meeting regularly throughout the first half of this year, and has been providing a connection to the technical work that's underway to define the transit consolidation plan that would ultimately be put before Everett City Council to inform potential decision-making by the council on the future of transit for Everett. Central to this work has been the need for consultant support to develop that fully integrated public transit network. And so that brings us to the action that's before you today. The scope of this work will include research, service planning, performance analysis, ridership forecasting, some extensive public outreach, presentations, and then finally documentation that would form the core of that transit integration plan. The work's going to be closely coordinated both with the consultant team and also with an integrated community transit, Everett transit team. And while this is a close partnership with the city, it's important that community transit lead the technical work in this part of the work, because we ultimately are talking about integrating Everett into a larger transit network where community transit is the operator. So we're providing the leadership on it, but we're very closely partnering and coordinating, of course, with Everett. It's a joint process. So request for proposal 2022-078 was issued on June 13th. Solicitation was advertised on Community Transit's website. The RFP documents were downloaded by 9 firms, and then we received 2 proposals. From Nelson Nygaard Consulting and also from WSP USA. Those proposals were evaluated on predetermined evaluation criteria by a team of both Everett and Community Transit staff. Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates Incorporated ranked highest in the evaluation process. The total proposed price for this RFP task order is $220,224. And as Rick noted in his CEO report earlier, we were awarded a $500,000 WashDOT grant to support this work, specifically oriented around this integration task. The price was determined to be fair and reasonable. There is sufficient budget authority in the 2022 budget to cover the cost of the contract. And of course, the expenses will completely be reimbursed via that grant we received from WashDOT. The recommendation is that the board of directors authorize the chief executive officer to negotiate an award contract RFP 2022-078 task order for transit consolidation study to Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates for a not to exceed amount of $220,224, and the committee recommended adoption.
Thank you very much, Roland. Is there any questions with regard to this? I am seeing none. Covered that so well. All right, how about a motion?
I'll make a motion that the board of directors authorize chief executive officer to negotiate the award contract RFP 2022-078 task order for transit consolidation study to Nelson Nygaard Consulting Associates Incorporated for a not to exceed amount of $224,000. Wow, that's a nice number there.
Yeah, 22224. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mayor Naring, seconded by Councilmember Merrill, as I just heard, that's what I heard there. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That will pass unanimously as well. Under a chair's report, I just want to again thank Stephanie Wright, former council member Stephanie Wright, for her time on the board and dedication to our area. And just, you know, a lot has been said today about the staff and the hard work and the kind of the awards that we're getting at Community Transit. Never surprised by that. Great organization. Like Stephanie, I think there's a lot of people who work hard to try to be part of this board and take it very seriously and read entire reports of 78 pages. And just so thank you so much for the work that you do. And I also want to thank the former and current employees who feel not only emboldened, but comfortable enough to come up and speak before the board. And just know that you were heard and listened to. I know we don't answer directly just any more than we do at our council meetings when something, it just becomes a back and forth, so you don't answer at that time, but we do take those very seriously as well, so thank you for that. With that, any other board communication, and we can start down the Mayor Roberts? Okay.
I'll be attending the first PSRC TVV FTA working group. All right. I will be attending the first PSRC TVV FTA working group, what we're really trying to do is determine how our FTA funds are distributed through the transit agencies. As you all know, there is a formula that PSRC uses for those funds from FTA, and there is a entity that is trying to change that. So that's what this discussion is all about. And I've been selected to represent us as the transit agency for community transit on this particular working group. And we started our work on the 7th. So more to come on that. And I'll be looking to the staff to help me out on that.
Good hands. Councilmember Merrill?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councilmember Kenny? All right. Representative Nord?
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Derrick?
No, I'll just add my thanks. A lot of hefty reports today, and then with budget coming up, great stuff.
Very good. Mayor Frizell?
I will just add my thanks of the micro transit that's coming to Linwood in the next 6 weeks or so. Looking forward to kicking that off here.
All right. Well, very good. Mayor Matsumoto Wright? Or Councilmember Payne?
Yes, I'd like to say I'm absolutely looking forward to the Linwood Convention Center event for introducing the on-demand transit. I think that's a great opportunity for getting some people in using transit and maybe reducing some vehicle miles traveled and the climate impacts that are associated with vehicle use. I think it's a great way to go, and it's a huge opportunity for all of Linwood first. I am totally jealous, and I sure hope that we can roll this out if it's successful to Edmonds and other communities across the entire county, because it's going to have a huge impact on small communities most particularly, but also larger communities and the neighborhood routes that I'm hoping that those could start being developed into. I know that we've talked about maybe having a trolley in Edmonds, but I just love this idea and I'm really excited for it. And I'm going to bring all the people I can to this convention center event. I think I've got 5 people signed up. We're going to have to carpool.
All right.
Thank you, though. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe communities with ferries and transit routes as well. Councilmember Derrick.
Nothing to add. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Oh, here I am.
There we go. Mayor Matsumoto.
Yes, I'm so sorry that I still can't figure out how to do this, what to press after all this time. But yes, I'm really excited for a lot of the things that I heard today. And with Mountain Lake Terrace being one of the light rail stations, I'm really hoping that we're going to be talking to community transit even more about what we can do with our Mountain Lake Terrace station. I know that Linwood is the terminus and a lot of things have to stop over there, but not everyone's going to be going to the Linwood station. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? Anything from staff? And we don't have an executive session, so with that, we are adjourned.